Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. In 2019, Morningstar found that in the United Kingdom, there were more funds managed by a man called David than a woman. Now, did you know that funds are managed by a portfolio manager? What is the role of a portfolio manager, and what is the role of an investment advisor? And do you feel intimidated by the investment industry? Now, there are many young people taking business and finance courses and focused on capital markets because they really don't know that there are other jobs and positions, and they don't know what else is out there in the industry. But if you want to work in the finance industry, you'll want to watch this episode of Empowered. Kim Shannon is a portfolio manager and founder of Sionna Investment Managers. Sionna is one of the largest independent investment managers founded by a woman in Canada. Kim, welcome.
Great. I'm pleased to be here.
I'm so good. I'm actually really happy to see you. I see you on Bay Street often. We see each other. We wave. Hi, how are you? Now I want to delve into who you are. So what is your story?
Well, I didn't start out to be an investment manager. My undergraduate degree was anthropology, but was always a volunteer. And so from that position of volunteerism, I've said, how do I get to do this organizing thing? I was on every kind of student organization you could think of, from very traditional things like being on a women's fraternity, all the way to being running the sex ed center at the University of Toronto. And so how could I get a job organizing things? And when someone told me that was business, that's the first moment I said, if business is about doing things with other people, then I'm in. If it's just about earning profits and trying to get rich, that doesn't do anything for me. So I went back and I did an undergraduate degree in business, and I did really well. I graduated with distinction. And then I went out and looked for a job. But it was 1983. I started all the way back in, 40 years ago in the industry, and took the first job I could get, which was at a small trucking fleet insurance specialist. And they asked me in the accounting department. And then I was fortunate enough, they asked me to roll T-bills. And if you remember back then, interest rates overnight were 14%. And I love the job of talking to the street and finding out the best rate and helping to get the best deal for our firm. Heard about the CFA, signed up, took it, decided I wanted to be in the investment world because it was so challenging and demanding, and got a job as an investment manager.
Okay, so I'm going to take you back. You said roll T-bills. There's a lot of people out there that have no idea what that means. What does that mean?
Well, most companies have a lot of cash sitting on the books. And in the interim, you want to make a little bit of money. And you want to make the best amount of money you can. So back then, I was calling up Schedule B banks, which are lower credit quality, to get a better rate. And just making sure that when they matured, I would roll them over and replace them with another one that got us the best rate that particular day. And taught me a lot about investing and the social side of investing. It's both understanding the business and doing the best by your client, but it's also a very collegial, chatty kind of industry. And I really like that part about the business as well.
It's interesting because you talk to a lot of women and they're so intimidated about this industry. It's like, it's high flying. There's so many people. There's a lot of money. Everything is happening. Like, what made you decide, other than the people part, to get into the investing world? I mean, fine. You came from anthropology. You love numbers, but there has to be something else that made that passion come out.
Well, I got into anthropology because I was curious about the world. And I really wanted to do a job where I felt like I learned something new every day. And the capital markets are impossible to understand 100%. And why are they impossible? Because they're equal parts fundamentals, which you would say an understanding of the math or the fundamentals that drive the market. But the key is the human embeddedness inside the market, the human irrationality that's prevalent across markets, because everything connected to markets is created by human beings, and they reflect us and our emotions. And so that's why markets go to euphoric highs and depressed lows. So you have to add that combination of the two. And that to me was endlessly fascinating.
I love the fact that you keep talking about the human aspect of it. We're going to talk a little bit more with Kim Shannon, so please don't go away. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're discussing embodying empowerment by discovering your unique abilities. And I've got Kim Shannon here. Now, Kim, before we went to break, you were talking about how, you love the industry because of the whole human interaction and the human factor. I have to ask you, artificial intelligence is coming out right now. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's going to take a very long time before it's going to be able to take on an active human manager because it relies on a lot of data. And if you go back in financial market history, there wasn't a lot of data retained. And until recently, it was very expensive to store data. And so for that reason, it can't get enough data to bet against us. And the early funds that are attempting to do that have not done that well. So I think it's going to take many, many decades. But the problem is there's always new products.
Yes.
And it won't have any data on the new products. But a human can sit around and try and guess where that's going to go, especially given that a lot of new products are actually old products, but just renamed with new features. And we kind of know what they're all about.
This is very true. Okay, I want to step back now. Because you've been in the industry for a very long time. I've been in the industry for 26 years, long time as well. How have things changed since you first joined the industry, or have they?
Well, some things haven't changed and other things absolutely have. Like, for example, when I joined the industry 40 years ago, there wasn't even personal computers really on every desktop. They were just emerging back then. And so back then it was about how to get enough quality information and make a decision. And you had to dig for them. Mm-hmm. Today, you get the difference is there's so much information, you have to filter them. It's a whole different skill set. But there's, the industry's, way back then, it was just stocks and it was Canadian equities and US equities and then bonds. And now there's been a whole splintering of products. So there's a lot of complexity, but not all of it is serving investors well.
So let's talk about the asset management side. There are hardly any women. What can we do? Like, why does the asset management side have fewer women?
Well, you're absolutely right. In terms of the studies that have looked at what percentage of assets around the world are actually managed by women, mm-hmm. other than just the numbers, and it's 1.5%. And I love that statistic because as soon as you put it on the table, everyone knows there's no equity in that.
Right.
And yet it's clear that there's no impediment for women to be in the field. So what is the dynamic that's creating it? But you also have to step aside and say, how many women CEOs of public companies are there? There's a lot of fields where there's a lot of power and money involved, and they tend to have a lack of women, including this industry. And I think one of the major issues is that when there's a lot of intensity, people tend to hire what they know. And what they know in asset management is male, pale, and stale.
Oh.
And so then they go out and they hire what they know, and they're missing out on the new number of people mm-hmm. that want to come in, which are women, but more women need to want to come into business. And that's starting to happen. Now MBA classes are 50% women. They struggled for a long time to get it past that 30% level. So over time, I think it may happen, but I think it will continue to be slow.
But, I agree with you. 50% women are in Ivy or wherever it is. But I think they're all focused on working in capital markets. And I think a lot of them don't understand that you can be a portfolio manager. You can be an investment advisor. There are so many other job functions in the industry, but they seem to focus on an equity analyst or something similar.
Well, I think that the best way to run a career is to get into the first job you can get, because sometimes that's not at all easy. So get the job you can get, but then you look around and you look for jobs that you think you could do well. I emulated people where I said, they were leading, and back then and they were all men, and I said, I could do that job. And I think it's that belief that you can do it and work your way, talk into those jobs that will get you there. And I think women are well suited to asset management.
I agree with you, and I agree with the fact that it's important to ask questions. It's important to try out different things. And when we come back, we're going to talk about mentorship. Don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing embodying empowerment by discovering your unique abilities. Kim, before we went to break, we were talking about the fact, ask questions. And I'd said to you, my mother always said, if you don't know, ask. But there's a whole new generation out there right now that's afraid to ask questions. And they're afraid of having, asking the wrong question or whatever. What would you say to somebody who's coming out of university right now and is afraid of that next step?
Well, I think informational interviews are an excellent way to get a better understanding. And talking to people who are doing something. Like, I thought I wanted to become an HR person.
Oh.
And I got an interview with someone in HR, and they said, you think HR is helping people? And he said, my job, the part of my job I hate the most is firing people. Do you want to be doing a lot of that? And I realized that wasn't, he was right. I did not understand what this job was all about, and I looked elsewhere. So go out there and do informational interviews. If you think you want to do something, go chat with somebody in that role and find out whether it suits you. You'll get a good judgment on that.
Actually, that's excellent, words of advice. I'm a firm believer of mentorship. I think, everybody needs it in order to get to the next level or whatever. Did you have a mentor that helped you succeed in the industry?
Absolutely. I actually had 3 mentors. I had 2 men and a woman. And the woman wasn't in my field, the 2 men were. And it's absolutely critical. You need a senior person who sees in you their younger selves, and they want to support you. But it's a 2-way street in mentorship. You have to give back to whoever's giving you support.
Agreed.
So when they tell you to read a book or to take a course, do it. And by the time you come back, go tell them that you did it. And that'll be very encouraging to them. But it was very critical for me to find a senior woman. And one of my mentors helped me find that person. And it was Deanne Cohen. And she ended up being on many corporate boards. And she had tremendous, she's still alive today. She just has a tremendous common sense. But there was these delicate issues for me as a woman that no other women, I didn't know any other senior women in my industry. Mm-hmm. How should I deal with them? Like, for example, I was trying to get pregnant. I just got offered a very huge promotion. Should I tell my new boss? And the answer was no.
You know what? You're not the first one to say that, because I was talking to Nevena Trajkova, and we were talking about tenured positions at universities, and she was saying the exact same thing.
Exactly. That and I ended up doing excellent jobs for them and built up a lot of assets because I didn't abandon my job when I was successful enough to have a child. And it bonds you to the organization more when they support you when you're doing that. But I needed that kind of advice from someone with that kind of seniority to know that that was the right thing to do.
I think we all need that type of advice, regardless of what industry we're in, whether it's finance or whatever. We always need that one person to go to, someone that we can bounce ideas off of, someone that can help guide us to that next level. I want to switch it over to networking. Some people think networking is great. Others think that it's a waste of time. What to you is networking? What are the types of networking, and how are they effective, and what are their benefits?
Sure. Networking is important at every layer of your career. At the early stages of your career, it's about meeting your peer group and just asking them, what's it like at your shop? What do you do? And what are all the different firms in the industry? I might be at an asset management firm and you're at a brokerage firm. How's that different? And you're a sell-side analyst. Can you tell me more about that? And so you learn about your industry. And that is very, very critical. At more senior levels of your career, you meet your peers, and you try and get to know people not only in your local community, and that's where you build out your knowledge base, but then you go to global conferences and you start meeting the investment greats of the world, and you get to feel and smell them and see how they think and see how they respond, and that can help you. And it's also about doing a lot of volunteerism and sitting on boards, meeting other people, and getting known, getting invited to things like this, to sit here and speak with you, and spreading out your name so that when you're an entrepreneur like myself and you're being put up as a potential firm to hire, people say, yes, I've heard of Kim before. I've seen her. I like her. And that helps you get the business.
But I mean, that's why you're here, because you've got this incredible wealth of knowledge, and it will be helpful to so many people going forward. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're discussing embodying empowerment by discovering your unique abilities. That's such a mouthful. And I'm joined by Kim Shannon, founder and co-chief investment officer at Sionna Investment Managers. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's continue. I want to talk about self-development. I think it's critical for everybody to take courses and learn. My mother said once, she said, you will learn and learn and learn, and by the time you're dead, you haven't learned anything. So why is self-development so critical?
There's so many layers to that. And I think the first one is a career over 40 years can be a very long time.
It is a long time.
Yes. And do you want to be doing the same old for 40 years? That would get pretty dull. Mm-hmm. It's better to be climbing the ladder and continually being challenged along the way. Yeah. But even if you are already made of that ilk and you're taking your courses and you're going off on conferences and learning more and more, any industry you're in is evolving. And earlier I was pointing out that at the beginning of my career, they didn't even have computers on everyone's desk. Yeah. So that was like a first level of learning. So you've got to evolve with the industry and keep learning to keep up with what's going on and the dynamic that's going on. I talked a bit about how simplistic the industry asset mix was at the beginning and how complicated it is today. And you have to keep developing to be on top of those changes and to be really and truly effective and then happy in your role because nothing is too hard for you.
Yeah, and you know what? You're absolutely correct. The world has evolved so much on a regular basis, on a daily basis, minute by minute. You have to be able to keep up. Just, going home after work on a regular basis isn't good enough. I want to talk about, you talked about climbing the ladder. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about the different stages of a career and how does that build empowerment?
So if you think about the early stage of your career, it's really about trying to become a subject matter expert in your field. Now, ideally, you have done some level of volunteerism before you come into the role, or you're continuing to do that kind of work while you're in the role, because that's how you get to learn to be a leader and practice at it earlier than you will likely get it in a real job. But no one becomes a subject matter expert until they have about 10 years of a field under their belt. So the sooner you start, let's say through volunteerism, the faster and more rapidly your career can go. But once you're the subject matter expert and you try and be, the top 20% of your field, then it's all about becoming the person who understands the industry and the problems in the industry and how to solve those problems. Mm-hmm. And then you're the go-to person to speak at conferences, help your peers, help your clients solve their problems. Yes. You take the complexity of the world and you help them make it smaller so they can drive forward in their own business and life. And then the final stage is about, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Or do you want to give back to society? Do you want to help the younger people in the industry and help them come along and develop? So those are kind of different roles or paths you could take in that third stage of your career overall.
I mean, these are wonderful words of wisdom. We have, coming up to 30 seconds left. I can't believe how quickly today's show flew by. But I want to ask you, what is one piece of advice that you would give a woman looking to enter the industry today?
I think it's about really understanding yourself, talking to people in the field, and seeing if you match. Seeing if your core skills match the skills that the industry needs. I thought that my understanding of human nature was going to be a decent additive to the investment management world, and that gave me some confidence to get in.
Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, Kim. I know that you will help a lot of young women coming into the industry.
Terrific. Thank you.
In April 2023, there was a new Bloomberg analysis that said in the United States, at the CEO level, women finally outnumbered men named John. There were 41 women leading S&P 500 companies and 23 CEOs named John. So we're back to Johns and Davids again. So if you want to work in the investment industry and want to learn about how to become an investment advisor or a portfolio manager, reach out to an executive or individual who has those job titles. We need more women in the financial industry, and many individuals will take the time to explain those jobs and other positions to you. All you have to do is ask. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.